numerology to life because I see it in everything.
You remind me of the Columbo of numerology.
That's right.
Actually.
Absolutely true. Always doing the research, always trying to get to the detective side of, wait a second, what happened? And then getting the numbers to see the pattern.
When you first came out with this, did people say to you, look, this isn't real science. This is makeshift stuff. You're making some of this up. It's not a real science. It doesn't really add up. Did you first get flack?
You've seen me. You think anyone's going to mess with me like that, Kim? They'd be scared to death. Let me tell you what I know. Even a skeptic, if I spend time with a skeptic, they always say, look, I didn't know anything about this, but I have to say you're dead on. As long as you are truly accurate, people won't say that. You see?
Yes.
They'll say it if you hit and miss. I've never been the hit and miss girl, and that's why I know it's God-given. You know, I'm raised Catholic, and that's my faith. When they call this the occult, I say, if you think numerology is your God, it's the occult. But if it's simply a tool, why wouldn't God give us a bunch of tools to be happy here?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but the other thing is my next book's going to be called The God Numerology Connection. And I've got 2 priests that are going to help me.
I love it.
Oh, it's going to be huge because like what you just said, hey, anyone can poo-poo a science or put you until they hear what you have to say.
How about Laura Bush and her husband, George?
Well, you know, it's been a long time since I've done the numbers, but I do know what they shared as a couple was the number 6 and 4. And the number 6 and 4 is family. It's like we're going to get through this thick and thin. That's what Laura's had to do. Like she has an understanding about George. None of us do, you know? But you know what I think is remarkable about him? Since the guy was so hated, how did he get back in the second term? And then when I talk to people who voted for him, they end up saying, well, you know, we were in the war and I just figured he could fix it. Do you see my point? I mean, it's people, meaning we the people. We have to learn from our past to get it right. But what's funny about George Bush, like everyone I know who's met him, he's a funny guy. He's like a 6 life path. He knows that he's reviled in some circles, but I can't tell you that's still true, Kim. Right now, I don't know if you've seen the billboard where it says, you missed me yet?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen it. What is it?
Well, it says, you missed me yet? And it's George Bush. And I can assure you, there are some people who really do miss him. And here's what shifted. What's going wrong right now with Congress in general, they're not listening to the people. And I personally have never lived in a time where that was true. Meaning if the polls say 20% more don't agree, then usually it means Congress has to regroup and do it differently. Never seen this before. Do you see?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm surprised. And as far as Democrats go, 27 years of my life, I mostly went Democrat, always did. But I will not tolerate it on either side. No one is the absolute power in the United States of America. We have to listen to each other because that's what makes us great.
Have you ever had politicians call upon you to help them?
Yeah, I counsel everybody. I do. I have a ton of celebrity clients. I have politicians. I have corporations that have me help their staff get along better. Everybody calls me. Of course, my joke is my birth certificate name is 911, so who can call for help?
What has been the greatest challenge in your work? It sounds like you've had tremendous success and prosperity. If there are and have been any challenges, what have they been?
I would tell you, and this is true for anybody, whatever career or life purpose they have, you have to keep pushing. You see, that's what I would say. If I stopped promoting numerology, it would just fizzle. You see, like I have a life purpose. I'm trying to make a change. I want people to be able to pick the right career for them. I want people to have great love in their life. Well, the only way to do that is to bang that drum loudly and get out there and do it. But if I didn't push and do, it'd be done. So that is very much a challenge. And, you know, there's certain times of the year, like someone's birthday, for example, where you want to chill, you know?
Yeah.
And there's certain months that I make a note, like 7 and 8, July and August. Those really are good months to stop and regroup as a person and make a list of what it is you want to accomplish, as opposed to my favorite time of the year for what I do is January, because that's when everyone wakes up and says, I don't want to do it like I did it last year.
I would imagine the subconscious is also more receptive to new input.
Well, remember, they've just gone into a new cycle. They've entered a new personal year cycle. And that's why when New Year's Day happens, we feel different. You feel different.
Have any Kabbalist ever called you?
How do you mean?
Someone who does Kabbalah, who's into Kabbalah.
Not at all. No. I mean, I will get notes from people who do numerology, and they might ask me a question. They're like, "Wow, I've read your books, and it's a little different than what I know. And can I ask you a question?" I get a lot of that. And like Louise Hay, who's become a buddy to me, I adore her, and I always promoted "You Can Heal Your Life" for like 20 years, and then we finally connected, and we have this very sweet connection. And she adores what I do because of its accuracy. So yeah. I mean, there are people that I would count as mentors who, once we know each other, want the advice and help of what it is numerology is.
Who's helped you? Who has mentored you?
Well, Louise was my number one.
Okay.
There's no question. When I was in my 20s, Louise's book, You Can Heal Your Life, because I was raised in a family of 11.
Wow.
11 brothers and sisters, mom and dad, so that's 13 people. I was number 9. I could have been lost in the shuffle, but there was no way I was going to put up with that. So I found You Can Heal Your Life, and I started to study the affirmations, and they worked because, I'm a really, really good student. That is obviously a big part of who I am. And I just did those affirmations daily to flip things for me. And being a double 3 in numerology, 3s are natural comedians. Well, I did stand-up comedy starting at 21. So I would apply that to my comedy, the affirmation stuff, and then later numerology got implemented. And what shifted my career into numerology, Kim, was KFI Talk Radio in 1995. I was supposed to be on for 15 minutes to talk about comedy, and I just happened to mention numerology. Well, the phone lines went berserk, and I was on air for 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's when I knew. I'm like, oh, that's why this is so easy for me. Like, reading was effortless. The minute I knew about numerology, I could read anybody.
Were there mentors before, though, in numerology for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say absolutely not, because I've never once finished reading a book. Any numerology book out there, I've never, ever finished reading. A lot of them are very mathematical and exhausting, and a lot of them go into things that I personally don't think are necessary to get you where you need to go.
Right.
And I know people, we're simple. And what I mean by that is none of us have time. So if you can give us the information quickly, we're happy. And some of those books got very cumbersome. But I will tell you this is my favorite story. Sylvia DiPietro is a numerologist, and she wrote a book. And I was like 21, I guess, when I first was reading her book. And I would do reads out of it. Now, sometimes there was a couple things where she hit or missed, but she was overall just right on, okay? Well, I always thought, oh, my gosh, what if I could ever be as good as Sylvia? This is what my brain would think. Like, I don't want to do numerology professionally until I'm ready. Well, by the way, 13 years of study before I went professional. It's a long time.
It is.
So check this out. It was a talk show. It was the Leeza talk show, and the producer's name was Kathy. And Kathy and I are talking, and Kathy's out of New York. Well, we sit down, and I start doing her numbers, and she looks at me, and she goes just like this. Oh, my God. She goes, Glynis, you're amazing. She goes, you're so fast. She goes, you remind me of my friend Sylvia DiPietro. And I'm like, my whole body just goosebumped and freaked out. And she goes, but you're better. I'll never forget it. And that's the day I knew, I have arrived.
That's awesome.
That's an amazing story. How could someone know Sylvia DiPietro, No one, have you heard that name?
No, never.
Me either, except that book. But she was the only one that moved me. But, I want to say this too to the people listening, especially if they're considering doing numerology. You've got to come up with unique conclusions so that you can contribute to the science. It's not good for you to take these books and just because the book's accurate, you think you are. That's a big mistake. And I do get that. I've got clients who say, well, I've read both your books. I can read anybody. I'm going to do what you do. And I'm like, really? It took me 13 years to get to where I am. And just because I wanted to share it with you, my purpose with sharing it, Kim, was just to help them with their lives. I didn't say, put on your numerology hat and go out there.
Don't you think a part of it, Glynis, is the matrix that you've created and what you've figured out and discovered and then assembled, but it's also, there's an intuitive side too that's working in you, isn't there?
I'm extremely psychic, but I firmly believe we are. Like, sometimes you can find a tool that opens your third eye. If I open my eye on numerology, you can run, but you can't hide. I'm totally psychic, and that's where it becomes uniquely me. But the book, I wrote it with such intuition that you can still do it and be accurate. Like if you do your 6 numbers, you're going to go, oh my gosh, that's me. And what's exciting about that for me, Kim, is when I used to read other numerology books, it would hit and miss. Like people say, well, that part's me, but that part isn't. And I really wanted to make sure my book was way more accurate than any